For quite some time the media has followed the case of Sherri Papini, and so of course have we. The disappearance of Sherri really became big news when her crying husband showed up on the screen with a public plea for help to find his missing wife. Mr. Papini came home from work and his wife and their two kids aged 2 and 4 were nowhere to be found. As they were not home to greet him as they used to, he called the daycare, whom told him his children had not been picked up by his wife. Keith Papini started driving around in the area around the property, but as Mr. Papini didn't find any clue of his family, he then used the Find My iPhone app to track his wife's cell phone. As he discovered Sherri's cell phone down the street, he called the police and reported her missing. He was convinced his wife had been abducted. Mrs. Papini disappeared on November the 2nd while she was jogging. The police were investigating a blog post written back in 2003 by a person claiming to be Sherri Grave, Mrs. Papini's maiden name. The blog post were a bizarre post in which someone claiming to be the kidnapped mother of two spurs hatred against Latinos, and Mrs. Papini should in the post have expressed she was proud of being white. This led to the suspicion of some kind of hate crime. The Daily Mail has learned that the blog post was not written by Mrs. Papini, but should be a malicious prank by a former high school enemy. The blog post told in details how Mrs. Papini should have broken the nose of a Latino girl, and how Mrs. Papini then got attacked by a group of Latinos, 3 guys and 5 girls. The group of boys and girls should have jumped Sherri, and they should have expressed how they hated skinheads, how skinheads should be burned alive, and how Mrs. Papini and her ancestors were all KKK. The author of the blog post stated she was knocked to the ground and kicked. The post then should have continued telling how proud Mrs. Papini was of being white and claimed that she supported skinheads. The police could tell Mrs. Papini wasn't abducted for the ransom, as nobody had claimed the reward of $50,000. Mrs. Papini was found chained up on the side of the road on Thanksgiving after she had been held captive for 3 weeks. After Mrs. Papini was found, her husband told the heartbreaking story of when he first saw her after she had been abducted. Keith Papini told how his lovely wife was covered in bruises, ranging from yellow to black, and how her beautiful blonde hair had been chopped off. Her nose was broken and she weighed only 87 pounds. Sheriff Tom Basenko told that detectives had spoken with Sherri Papini for several hours, but there is still no clue to if she was specifically targeted or she was randomly abducted. Sheriff Basenko told ABC News how Mrs. Papini had a message branded into her skin. The branding was not a symbol, but a message. While making this video, police should be hunting 2 Hispanic females driving a dark SUV, and they should be armed with a gun. A private investigator and human trafficking expert named Bill Garcia told the Today Show that he believes that sex trafficking could be the motive for Mrs. Papini's abduction. Keith Papini has revealed more about his wife's abuse. At a press conference, he told how his wife was pushed out of a car with a chain around her waist and a bag over her head. Keith told how his wife had screamed so much she was coughing up blood from the screaming, just trying to get someone to help her when she was pushed out of the car. Later, the sheriff revealed to the public how Mrs. Papini, after she was dropped off the car, had walked to a nearby church, but nobody was there, so she walked until she came near Road 17, where she managed to flag down a motorist after she was dropped off the car. Online, there has been a lot of debate if the kidnapping is a hoax or not. Due to experts, the skeptical response from the public isn't strange, as the details Sherri's investigators and the family members have given don't fit the pattern of a typical abduction. There are a lot of odd stuff going on to this case, but thereby not said it's a hoax. In another case, where a woman named Denise Hoskins was kidnapped from her home where her boyfriend Aaron Queen were left behind, it was turned down as a hoax. But later it turned out to be true, as Matthew Miller pleaded guilty to the kidnapping of Denise, whom he had sexually assaulted and later released. The couple received an apology but have filed a lawsuit against the department. Sherri Papini and her family has left their home in Reading and have moved to an undisclosed location. They decided to leave their two dogs behind. The dogs are taken care of by a friend. In an interview for ABC 2020, Keith told they are now living at a secret location. Neighbors don't believe the family will ever move back. Criminal profiler Pat Brown is wondering how come Keith Papini never have said people were wrong when they thought Sherri had been abducted, and how Keith is referring to the kidnapping as a tragedy and not as a crime. He shows no anger towards the people who took his wife and almost killed her. He has more focus on telling the public what kind of wife Sherri is. But he leaves out discussion of finding the perpetrators and getting justice. Pat Brown is wondering how come Sherri is remembering nothing except a partial description of her female abductors, like voice, eyebrows, and hair. Brown mentions this could be due to post-traumatic stress disorder, but the lack of memory is also often seen in fake kidnappings because there is actually nothing to share. But it's not necessarily the case with Mrs. Papini. Now to the type of crime this could be according to Pat Brown. Some are saying it is connected with sex trafficking, that it has all the hallmarks of this, especially promoted by the Papini private investigator. Brown sees no signs of this at all. There is a myth going around these days that healthy and happy family women are being grabbed off the street and forced into prostitution, never to be seen again. This is not true in the US. Sex trafficking, as people think of it, is prevalent in poor countries where young women are indeed kidnapped and forced into brothels. There is a limited version of this crime in the United States within certain communities, especially those being brought in by certain criminal rings. Brown claims this is not true in the US. Sex trafficking, as people think about it, is in poor countries. Brown don't believe sex traffickers nor pimps would kidnap a 34-year-old middle-class woman out jogging. Women and girls taken while jogging are almost always taken by serial perpetrators. Sex traffickers and pimps can get girls much easier with runways, drug users, or girls who are in the sex industry. Getting those girls is easy and would not get as much attention as this case. Pat Brown states a pimp or sex traffickers would never beat their victim in the face nor cut off the hair of the person they are about to make money off. So what could have happened to Mrs. Papini? Pat Brown finds it odd that Sherri only spent one night at the hospital, if she was severely battered. Besides, Brown doubts the husband's claims of his wife screaming until she bled, as, medically speaking, this is not something that occurs. Pat Brown is speculating if the information we are getting is wrong. The police have to consider if the injuries might be self-inflicted or caused by others, but it would not be the first time a woman suffering from Munchausen syndrome, which is a personality disorder, claims to have been harmed, raped, or stalked to gain attention, and sometimes the person will cause injuries to themselves to support their claim. A spouse to a woman like that will buy into whatever the partner is claiming, as it will make his life easier. This is even seen where spouses of women with the disorder has killed their babies. Another red flag Brown mentions is the claim that the perpetrators are women. This will make it easy to return without having been raped, which would have been strange if she had been taken by two men. Brown describes this crime as very odd, as well as the people. But Pat Brown isn't inside the investigation, so Brown said they might have more information that might prove Sherri Papini was the victim of an awful crime. A crime that might become popular in the community in the future. Or the public has been victims of a hoax designed to get money and attention. As we thought this case couldn't get any stranger, we figured out we were wrong. The latest news in the case reveals how Sherri Papini's look-alike high school pal vanished while she was out jogging. But unlike Sherri, the girl was never seen again. Tera Smith disappeared August 22, 1998, while she was leaving her Reading home for jogging in the evening. Unlike Sherri, who returned, Tera is still missing. Nobody or any trace of her was ever found. The Daily Mirror could reveal how Keith Papini went to see the parents of the girl who vanished 18 years ago in similar circumstances as his wife. Tera was heading to the same trail where Sherri went missing. A few days after Sherri disappeared, Keith went to Tera's parents, Terry and Marilyn Smith, in the hope speaking with them would be helpful. Besides, Mr. Papini hoped to get their advice how to handle the situation. The Smiths tells they didn't know Mr. Papini, but they knew Sherri through her friendship with their daughter. Freshman homecoming princess Tera was 16, pretty and blonde when she disappeared. Terry revealed he thought Keith to be far too optimistic about Sherri's return. The Smiths are happy on the behalf of the Papini family that Sherri returned. They would have wished their daughter had done too. But in Tera's case, there was a person admitting meeting her and picking her up. Troy Zink was Tera's martial arts instructor. Mr. and Mrs. Smith believed their daughter wanted to end a relationship with Troy Zink, who was a convicted sex offender. Friends of Tera later revealed the then 29-year-old married dad of two was romantically involved with the 16-year-old girl. The teen's bedroom uncovered letters and journal entries which corroborated this. Keith Papini has passed a voluntary polygraph test, but the sheriff says they haven't ruled him out as a suspect. They keep an open mind and looking at all avenues. While recording this video, the case is still unsolved. And this is where our video should have ended. But as we had the most wonderful community, we received more links about the case. This made us search for even more information. So here you go. Here's more news about the case. Serial killer profiler John Kelly, who is the founder and president of Stalk Inc., is convinced the case has serial rapist or serial killer written all over it. Kelly believes Mrs. Papini somehow has convinced the perpetrators to let her go. Kelly is sure Papini would be able to give a clear description of her abductors, but she is too afraid as they know where she lives. John Kelly expresses how this is a sadistic situation and how he has a hard time understanding that people as sadistic as the perpetrators in this case are would let Mrs. Papini live. Kelly thinks it's a staging that the perpetrators abducting Papini was two women. The youngest of the women is described having long curly hair, while the older woman is described having straight black hair. A statement analysis has been made of an anonymous reward letter that has been posted regarding a reward for the release of Sherri Papini. You will find a link for the statement analysis in the description. And there has been a statement analysis of Keith Papini's public statement as well. On the post about Keith's statement, we hear about the GoFundMe page. This was made by the family with the purpose to bring Sherri home. It raised $49,000. The GoFundMe page has stopped taking donations. At this time, there are no indications that the money was refunded. We found an interesting post about the body language of Keith Papini. The analysis is made by Dr. Lillian Glass. Glass has made the body language analysis of Keith from his appearance in 2020. Lillian wonders how someone cannot make eye contact during a 6-part interview. It is her belief Keith is crying alligator tears. Besides, Glass wonders how the recovery time of Keith's crying breakdown is too quick. Lillian finds Keith inappropriately laughing and his sudden nose-pulling odd. Glass also explains her thoughts on the language of Keith, as well as she tells why she is concerned. All the analyses are very interesting to read. Of course, we will leave links for the analyses in the description with a title, so they are easy to find. And as always, we will leave links to the articles that inspired us for making this video, so you can dig deeper into the case if you want to. We are not judging Sherri nor Keith Papini, but as many others, we think this is a very strange case. What do you guys think? Do you think Mrs. Papini was abducted, or do you believe it was a hoax? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you don't want to miss out on any crime news, follow us on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. And of course, hit that follow button to make sure you don't miss out on any of our videos. Some of the links shared in this video are links we haven't shared on our other medias.